The Hollow Empire. Tunde sat in his luxurious Lagos penthouse perched high above the bustling city. The skyline stretched endlessly, dotted with lights from high-rises, billboards, and traffic. He had everything: wealth, power, influence. But as he stared at the city, a void gnawed at him. His empire, built over years of relentless work, had given him status but robbed him of meaning. He scrolled through his phone absent-mindedly, seeking distraction. That was when he found a documentary about Olorunwa, a struggling village plagued by drought and poverty. Tunde watched in horror as the documentary unfolded. Children with sunken eyes, cracked lips, and distended bellies, villagers struggling to find water, fields reduced to dust. A strange emotion gripped him: guilt. He had spent his life accumulating wealth, yet here were people with nothing. A thought struck him like lightning: what if I left everything behind? What if I lived among them? The idea was absurd yet exhilarating. Could he trade his opulence for something real? Days turned into weeks, but the thought refused to leave him. Tunde found himself withdrawing from business meetings, uninterested in boardroom deals. At night he lay awake, haunted by the images. Finally, he made a radical decision. He would give it all up. He liquidated his assets, emptied his accounts, and prepared to leave everything behind. He didn't tell anyone. They would try to stop him. With nothing but a backpack and cash, he set out for Olorunwa. Tunde sat in the back of an old rickety truck, bouncing along dusty roads. The city had faded into the distance, replaced by vast arid African landscapes. The sun bore down mercilessly, sweat trickling down his brow. For the first time in years he felt excitement, but beneath that thrill a whisper of doubt nagged at him. You have no idea what awaits you. The truck stopped at the edge of a village, Olorunwa. Tunde stepped down, greeted by cracked earth, makeshift huts, and curious yet wary gazes. Flies buzzed around malnourished African children playing in the dirt. The elders, skeptical of his presence, watched silently. He felt out of place, an outsider in every sense. That night he lay on a simple mat in a small hut, listening to the sounds of the village, the distant cries of a baby, the whispers of the wind, the rustling of leaves. His stomach grumbled. He had barely eaten. The reality of his decision settled in. Could he truly adapt to this life? Days passed, and Tunde tried to integrate. He fetched water from a distant well, helped fix a broken fence, and sat with the children listening to their stories. He learned their struggles: disease, hunger, lack of education. Slowly the villagers warmed to him. He felt something stir within. Purpose. Life was harder than he imagined. The scorching sun made labor exhausting. Hunger gnawed at him. His body, used to comfort, resisted the harsh conditions. He fell sick but received traditional herbal treatment from an elder woman. It was a test of endurance, of commitment. One evening, as he sat with a group of children, he realized something. He had never felt this alive. He no longer thought about his wealth or his past life here. He was not a billionaire. He was just a man trying to help. He decided to use his remaining money to build a well, a school, and a small clinic. Months passed. The well was dug, bringing clean water. A small school opened, with Tunde teaching children the basics of reading and writing. The clinic provided basic healthcare. The village flourished. Tunde had found what he had been searching for: not wealth but fulfillment. Tunde sat under a baobab tree, writing a letter to his past self. You chased wealth and found emptiness. You abandoned it all and discovered meaning. If you are reading this, remember, true riches are not in what you own but in what you give. Olorunwa was a world away from the luxury of Lagos. Here people woke before dawn, fetching water from miles away, farming cracked earth that refused to yield crops. They worked tirelessly under the scorching sun, their hands rough from toil. And yet they smiled, they laughed, they shared. Tunde, dressed in simple village clothes, walked among them, observing their quiet resilience. Their hardships humbled him. They had so little, yet possessed a kind of wealth he had never known. Something inside him cracked. He could not stand by and do nothing. As days passed, Tunde immersed himself in the rhythm of the village. He fetched water from the distant well, his muscles aching under the heavy weight. He tried his hand at farming, but the earth was unforgiving. The village elders watched him, some with amusement, some with curiosity. Could a man from the city truly understand their struggles? Tunde did not yet have all the answers, but one thing was clear: he could not turn his back on these people. One evening he called the villagers together under the massive baobab tree, its roots stretching like ancient veins through the earth. The villagers came. Children sat cross-legged, women balanced infants on their laps, men leaned forward curious. Tunde took a deep breath. I came here searching for purpose, he said, and I have found it in you. The villagers exchanged glances, murmurs of uncertainty rippling through the crowd. From this day forward everything I own is yours. Gasps filled the air. They could not believe it. The man from the city who once lived in towers of glass was giving them everything: money, food, water pumps, even a school. The elders looked at each other trying to comprehend his words. The children clapped excitedly. Tunde smiled, a warmth spreading in his chest that he had never felt before. That night the village rejoiced. They sang, they danced, they beat drums under the moonlight. Their laughter echoed through the fields. The children ran barefoot, kicking up dust. The women prepared a feast over open flames. Tunde watched it all, feeling a part of something far greater than himself. He had never felt richer. Days turned into weeks. The village transformed. Wells were dug, crops were planted, a small school was built. The children learned to read and write. The villagers worked together with newfound hope. Tunde labored alongside them, feeling the sweat on his brow, feeling alive. He was no longer an outsider, he was one of them. But fate is a cunning storyteller. It gives with one hand and takes with the other. The drought returned fiercer than before. The well ran low. The crops struggled to survive. The village elders whispered among themselves, was this the price of sudden fortune? Tunde felt the weight of their fear pressing upon him. News of Olorunwa's newfound wealth spread beyond the village. Strangers arrived, some seeking help, others with greed in their eyes. Bandits lurked in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The harmony of the village was under threat, and Tunde knew he had to protect what they had built. One night chaos erupted. The bandits came armed and ruthless. They took food, destroyed homes, demanded money. The villagers fought back, but they were outnumbered. Flames lit the night sky as huts burned. Tunde stood in the middle of it all, helpless, fury burning in his chest. He had given everything to this place, and now it was being torn apart. When the morning sun rose, it revealed the scars of the night. Some homes were gone, some food stores depleted, but the spirit of the village remained unbroken. The elders met Tunde, their faces grim, but their voices steady. We will rebuild, they said, just as we always have, and he knew then that this was not the end. Despite the loss, the villagers refused to be broken. Together they repaired the damage. Brick by brick they planted again. They found ways to conserve water. The school reopened. The laughter of children returned. Tunde worked harder than ever, his heart beating with theirs. Olorunwa would not fall. Tunde had come seeking meaning. He had found it in struggle, in joy, in resilience. He was no longer just the man who once had wealth. He was a part of something greater, not because of what he gave, but because of what he shared. Years passed. Olorunwa thrived. The village was stronger than before, and so was Tunde. He wrote letters to his past self, reminding him that true riches were not in gold but in the bonds of people, in the land and hope. He sat under the baobab tree, smiling at the sound of life all around him. At first, life in Olorunwa felt perfect. Tunde learned to till the land, to fish in the river, to sleep under a sky full of stars. The villagers accepted him as one of their own. He felt peace for the first time in his life, a deep contentment in the simple routines of village life. As months turned into years, a restless shadow crept over Tunde. He missed the pulse of the city, the feeling of creation, of ambition. At night he dreamed of Lagos. Its neon streets, the smell of roasted suya, the hum of opportunity. The life he had abandoned whispered to him like a forgotten lover. One evening he sat with Baba Ifa, the village elder, under the baobab tree. I thought I could leave my past behind, but it still calls to me, he admitted. I miss the city, Baba. The old man gave him a knowing smile. A bird may fly to a new tree, but it never forgets its first nest. Go, my son, if the city calls, answer it. Tunde's excitement turned to dread. He had nothing left, no money, no business, no home. He had given it all away. The city would not welcome him back with open arms. He was trapped, and for the first time since coming to Olorunwa he felt fear. Determined to return, Tunde gathered what little he had and set out for Lagos, but the journey was long and unforgiving. The road was harsh, the transport expensive. The city loomed in the distance, but felt impossibly far away. When he finally reached Lagos, it was not the homecoming he had imagined. The city had moved on without him. He wandered familiar streets, but the people no longer knew his name. The once powerful entrepreneur was now just another face in the crowd. Tunde reached out to old friends, business partners, even distant relatives, but no one wanted to help him. The man who once had everything was now just a ghost of his former self. Doors closed in his face, the weight of his past generosity now an unbearable burden. With no money, no shelter, and no job, Tunde was forced to survive on the streets. He slept on benches, ate scraps, and watched the city's bright lights from the shadows. The place that once filled him with excitement now crushed him under its weight. In his lowest moment, Tunde thought of Olorunwa. He had left in search of something more, but had only found emptiness. He realized the village had given him something the city never had: belonging, and perhaps that was worth more than all the wealth he had once possessed. With nothing left to lose, he made the long journey back to Olorunwa. He walked for miles, his feet aching but his heart certain. The closer he got, the lighter he felt. He no longer belonged to Lagos. Olorunwa was his home. When he arrived, the villagers welcomed him with open arms. They had not forgotten him, not turned him away. He was not a stranger here, he was family, he belonged. Tunde sat with Baba Ifa once again under the baobab tree. You searched for something that was already within you, Baba Ifa said. Wealth is not in the city nor in gold, but in the people who stand by you when you have nothing. Tunde nodded. He finally understood. Tunde did not need riches to feel fulfilled. He had purpose, he had love, he had family. He picked up a hoe and began to till the land, not out of desperation, but out of choice. The restless shadow was gone, and in its place was peace. News of Tunde's dilemma spread through the village like wildfire. The people gathered, whispering among themselves. The man who had once saved them was now lost. He had given them everything. Now he had nothing, but Olorunwa had learned something from him. They had learned generosity, they had learned gratitude. That night, under the same baobab tree where he had once given his wealth, the villagers came forward. You gave us water, we will give you a river, said a farmer, pressing a bag of coins into Tunde's hands. You gave our children hope, now let us give you a future, whispered an old woman, handing him a wrapped bundle of food. Even the children offered their savings. Tiny precious copper coins. A young boy placed a single mango in his palm and said, you will need this for the journey. Tunde looked at the offerings in his hands and felt his heart swell with emotion. These people who had so little had given him everything. He fought back tears as he looked at each face, the farmer, the old woman, the children. This was more than charity. It was love. He knelt down and pressed his forehead to the ground, overcome with gratitude. Before he could leave, the villagers insisted on one final night of celebration. They prepared a feast with what little they had, roasting yams and fish, singing songs and dancing under the moonlight. It was a night of laughter, joy, and gratitude. The children ran around him giggling as the elders blessed him for his journey. At dawn, Tunde stood at the edge of the village, his bag filled with the kindness of Olorunwa. He looked back one last time at the faces that had become his family. He was no longer lost. He had found more than wealth or success. He had found himself. With a deep breath and a heart full of gratitude, he turned toward the road ahead, ready to begin again. With the villagers' blessings, Tunde made his way back to Lagos. The city had not changed, but he had the towering buildings, the rushing crowds, the luxury cars. It all felt different now. He no longer desired wealth for himself. He wanted to use it to build, to help, to make a difference. Using the money the villagers gave him, he started a company. Not for profit but for purpose. It focused on bringing clean water, education, and sustainable farming to villages across Nigeria. He hired the poor, empowered the weak, and gave opportunities to those who had none. Tunde's company grew not in wealth but in impact. More villages received water, schools were built, families found hope again. His work spread beyond Olorunwa, reaching places he had never imagined. People began to call him not a businessman, but a servant of the people. Years later, when he returned to Olorunwa, the people welcomed him not as the rich man who had once saved them, but as a brother who had never truly left. The children he had once helped were now adults, passing on the lessons of generosity and hope. As he stood beneath the baobab tree once more, he realized the greatest truth of all. He had given them wealth, but they had given him something greater. They had given him a home. He smiled, looking out at the village, and knew his journey had led him exactly where he was meant to be.